The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come here and spend some time with us. My name is Ben Murray. I am the Director of Contracts and Client Relations for Catharsis Productions, which means that I kind of keep track on what we agreed to do and make sure that we do it in the way that we agreed to do it. It's probably the quickest way to say that. So I've probably spoken with many of you, or at least seen email traffic from many of you through our booking agency and things like that. But just wanted to take some time here today and thank you for being here and explain a little bit about what we do and how we're doing it in this particularly different kind of year. I think the reality is that we all know this is just the last couple of months have just been bananas, right? In ways that we could have never predicted. And it's been unusual and difficult for people in all sorts of ways. Whether you're talking about COVID and the pandemic and how we're isolating ourselves and how we're changing how we interact with other human beings and other systems and institutions, or whether we're talking about some of these resurfaced issues of police brutality and a lack of accountability for that, or even if we're talking about the more recent news of our Supreme Court decision and what it means for our LGBTQ friends. We are in a unique time in a lot of ways where a lot of new issues and a lot of old issues are coming together and coming into the same stream in ways that they haven't before. And while those, I think, can seem different and unusual, I think to me that the through line is that all of these things bring up the idea of how we take care of people and our society's desire to talk about how we take care of people, whether that is in a medical facility or in talking about somebody's physical health, or whether that's making sure that other people have the same rights as some people and making sure that we're all equal in that way. We are very heightened right now as a society about taking care of people. And I think that's a great thing. And it's going to come with some growing pains. But the reality is it's important. And I think it can be difficult, at least for me, during this kind of time to think of my daily kind of minutia work and how that impacts things. I mean, we talk about sexual violence. We talk about really important things for a living, but I still find myself kind of thinking like, man, people are fighting for their lives, and I'm worried about how big this margin on a spreadsheet is, and that can seem really trivial. And I don't know if you all think that as well, or you all feel like that as well. But I just want to take a moment to encourage you and say that, look, what you're doing matters, and what we're all doing matters, because what you're doing by sitting here today, by listening to me and my colleagues today, you're saying, hey, the way that I make sure these young students coming in to my institution are best prepared is by going through these steps and figuring these things out, right? You are saying these people matter, and how I take care of these people matters. And it's a different way than it's been in the past, but there are some great things about that. And you are saying these people matter, not only academically, but also emotionally, because this is stuff that they need to hear. This is education, this is training that they need to hear, and you are making sure that they get it in the most relevant, most appropriate way considering the circumstances. So I just want to take a moment to kind of take a deep breath, but to also thank y'all, and thank you for caring about their academic and their emotional future, and caring about the people and taking care of them in the way that we are so concerned about taking care of everyone in our society right now. So where we are now is a weird place, as we said, right? Because of COVID and because of how that's working, we are in unusual circumstances in ways that we haven't been before, right? So physically, we are in an unusual place. We can't be in large groups of people. So some campuses are coming back, some are not. Some are coming back early, some are not. And we can't be in the same physical spaces as we were before. Anne, do you mind clicking the slide to the next step? Thank you. And so we're all kind of impacted in bizarre ways. And a lot of y'all don't even know your plans for the fall yet, right? I mean, some folks, haven't been able to hear from their administration. Some folks are still waiting on final enrollment counts, so you know what your budget looks like. Some folks know you're coming back, but you're not sure where the spaces are going to be and what classrooms you're going to be in. So there's just a lot of stuff that's still up in the air, even this late into the calendar year. That can be really stressful and really difficult. And there's just a lot of logistics that come with that. We tend to be in a space where we relied on having lots of people, especially when you're talking about, first year orientation, lots of people in a place at a certain time. And that was part of the exciting part about it. I mean, it was madness, but it was kind of exciting. And so the fact that that's not a reality anymore is a little bit of a loss, but it's also potentially an opportunity, because I think we have developed a new appreciation for some online things, right? I mean, this is something we would have never done before. And here we're interacting in this way. So we're learning from that. I think we all have Zoom head to some degree. But the reality is we have a new appreciation for that. And that is something that Catharsis Production we have taken into, spent a lot of time thinking about, because the reality is that we had a model of various people traveling around the world, talking to large groups of people, and that model just can't be sustained this year. And so while we initially tried to kind of think about ways that we could do this in a hybrid way, and we could show up for smaller groups and things like that, what we ultimately decided was that we are not going to do any in-person programs during this orientation season. So from now until at least Labor Day weekend, we are not going to be in person. We are, however, going to very much try and be live for people, because the impact of our program and the power of our programming is that we can have live interactive conversations with people. We can facilitate those conversations, answer real questions from real students in the moment. And to be honest, as we've test driven this, it's gone really well. Maybe even a little bit better than all of us expected, if I'm being completely honest. And we're really excited about that. So we want to share some of that here with you today. But the reality is that with a lot of schools still not knowing what they're doing and still being unsure about their budget and their timing, and with the reality of our educators and our people traveling from airport to airplane to rental car to hotel day after day, we can't guarantee anybody's safety. We can't guarantee our educator safety. We can't guarantee your safety when our educators show up. And it's important to us that everyone stay safe. And it's important to us that everyone stay in the position where they can receive and deliver the material as well as possible. And so that's what we're shooting for, and that's what we're going to do. And so we are making our best efforts to make that as seamless as possible. So all of our programming, whether it's Sex Signals, which you may have heard of, Hookup, which we're going to talk about today, Say What, Beat the Blame Game, any of our programs, those are all going to be done virtually. And they still need to be done virtually, because the reality is these issues aren't going away, right? We've just talked about a lot of these basic respect rights issues that are popping up, that are resurfacing. And the issues that we speak about, including those, but also sexual violence, sexual harassment, these things aren't going away. And in fact, in some ways, because of this more online culture, we're seeing them rear their ugly head in different ways. And so we're also trying to adjust some of our programs to adapt to that and to understand that. And we understand that that's a little weird, in terms of how you're used to seeing us. So we want to clarify, there are some things that are going to be same, and there are some things that are going to be different, right? So the things that are going to remain, we are still going to be engaging and interactive, right? There may be a PowerPoint now when there hasn't been before, because we have to have something on the screen, but it's going to be fun. We're going to be engaging. We're going to be interactive. We are going to be accessible. Our folks are going to make jokes. Our folks are going to be relatable to people. They're going to understand the audience. They're going to talk with the audience. We're going to work really hard to make sure that it is not just delivering the information that needs to be delivered, but also delivering it in a way that you have become accustomed to hearing from us, where we are interesting and we are engaging and we keep students' attention. We're also going to be research supported, because that's what we've always been, and we don't like to do things that can't be proven, right? So we want to make sure that everything we are doing is backed by the latest research, make sure that we are doing things that are appropriate from a academic and evidence-based level, right? And part of that is also focusing on moral reasoning. We're not here to be like, this is the law, make sure you follow the law, good, go home, right? This is about how we want to be as human beings from a moral and ethical framework. Again, taking care of other people, respecting other people's rights, respecting their voices. So we're gonna go beyond checking that box. We're not here to be something on your checklist that gets done. We're here to be something that improves your culture and changes your culture. There are going to be some things that change in this new way, and I think some of them are really cool. So we're going to mostly use the webinar software GoToWebinar. The reason we do that is because this allows us to have students asking anonymous questions. It helps them because they can speak up and say what's on their mind and think what's on their mind and not be afraid of what their peers next to them are thinking or watching. Obviously, at this stage of their life, we know that that's a big factor for them. And so having that freedom and being able to speak freely is really important. And we've been really pleased by what we see in our test runs of this. We are going to change the length of the program just a smidge. We're probably going to go a little bit shorter because, again, when people you already get butt alarms that go off during in-person presentations, but especially when you're sitting in front of a computer or a phone or things like that, it's better if we can keep it a little shorter. So instead of being that kind of normal 75 to 90 minute, we're going to try and shoot for that kind of 60 minute to 75 minute window to make sure that works better for folks. We're also going to have some support staff in place. So traditionally we have, for the hookup, one educator show up, do the training. In this circumstance, we're going to do our best to have a lot of people involved. One of those people is going to be behind the screen. You're not going to see them, but they're going to be there to answer questions that people are asking. They're going to be there to push people towards resources that they need. If there are occasional trolls, that person helps kind of filter them out as well. But really, they're there as an extra resource so that the presenters can actually pay attention to what's going on in the comments they're getting from the screen and kind of work with that in the best way possible. The audience setting is going to be a little bit different, obviously. We have options where folks can dial in on their own. So everyone can be on their own device in their own place just at the same time. But we can also be in situations where when schools have folks on campus, but they're meeting in small groups, where those small groups can still be together and they can have a representative speak for them and interact for them through the computer. So it's kind of a participation by committee in that way. And those are things that we can talk through when you guys speak with us. And then our audience capacity, we are keeping that. If you've worked with us before, you know that we kind of have that 400-ish audience capacity, our cap limit. And we're going to keep that out of respect for the contracts that we've already signed. But the reality is, if you are in a position to where you can have less people than that, maybe 200, maybe 250, that's a much better situation. And we are willing to incentivize that with, if you need an extra presentation, with some very kind of inexpensive ways to handle that, that we can kind of talk through for you as well. So that's certainly an option, and that's certainly a way that we can go with that. But today, what we're here to talk about specifically is the hookup. And the hookup is one of our programs that we've been running for quite a while. It's a really engaging discussion. It is something that works with students on their level and kind of opens up the scope of what a conversation about sexual harassment or sexual assault looks like, opens up that kind of continuum of violence. And this is a program, again, that we're doing live. I wanted to mention, I forgot to mention it earlier, that you may have heard of one of our programs called You Got This. That is a web-based training. That is a training that is self-guided. That is a software that people can do at their own pace. It comes in short modules. That is not a live program. The stuff we're talking about today is live programs, things that were traditionally done in person. Now we are doing in a different format, but it's still a live program that is done at a specific time and in a specific virtual place, if you will. But anyway, I apologize for forgetting that. In terms of the hookup itself, this is a great discussion. We take the act of sexual violence and we kind of connect it across the board. So we talk about how language intersects with that. We talk about how it's all on a continuum, right? So sexual violence, whether it's inappropriate sexist language or whether it's rape, these are all on a continuum of harm that are related based on how much people are willing to do in certain situations and what they're not checked on. And so that's something that we want to talk about. But we also talk about what healthy sexual encounters look like, because it's difficult to know what's wrong if you don't know what's right. But what healthy sexual encounters look like, what a regretted one looks like, and what rape looks like, because people confuse those things. And we don't have a lot of room in our society to talk about that. And the reality is we need students to be empowered in understanding what right looks like, what wrong looks like, and how they can function, not only for themselves individually, but also as a culture to help when they see something bad, do something about it. And whether that is at the party, when somebody is trying to take advantage of somebody who's intoxicated, or whether that's in class or at work when they hear something sexist that shouldn't be said, and they can step up and do something about that. Again, recognizing the signs of that kind of toxicity across the board so that they can do something about it across the board, so that hopefully it never gets to that end of the sexual violence continuum. That's what we're shooting for. That's what the major goal is for us. So today what we have is two of our senior educators. We have Anne and Anthony. And what they're going to do is kind of a demo version for you. We're not going to do the whole program. Some of you have already seen the whole program. And really the goal of this is for you to get a sense as to what it looks like when this is done live online, when this is done in a virtual way, because we can explain it all we want, but until you see it, that's, it's not as effective. So we want you to be able to see that. We want you to be able to work with them, participate like you think a student would, right? Answer the questions, fill out the polls, have fun with it, enjoy yourself for these few minutes. And then when they're done, I will come back and I will answer any questions you have. And then we'll call it a day. So Anne and Anthony, feel free to take it away. Thank you for your time, y'all.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. Hey, y'all, how's it going? Welcome to our little demo of the hookup. So I'm Anne. I'm one of the senior educators here at Catharsis, and I'm here with my friend and colleague.
That's me. Hi, I'm Anthony DiNicola. And Anne, do we have the PowerPoint still up?
Oh, did it go away?
There it is. It's back.
Sorry about that.
Anne was like, we're talking. We got to make our faces nice and big. But we appreciate you being here and engaging in this conversation. And I also want to thank Ben for his words at the beginning. It is an incredibly powerful time to be alive and to be a Black man doing this work, and to be engaging with my colleagues, and more importantly, to be engaging with the communities that we're all a part of, and knowing that we are going back into such an important time of the year, college orientation, and engaging with these students who are about to embark on the next big chapter in their lives. To be able to do that in the most intersectional way possible is truly important. And these conversations are going to be different, I imagine, this year for a myriad of reasons. We are trapped in a box, but many students are as well. And so I'm really excited to engage in these conversations, not only with them, but also with incredible colleagues like Anne.
Thanks so much, Anthony. And yeah, seconded everything that Anthony said. We know that a part of our work here is engaging in tough conversations, and we're really excited to be doing that with your students. So the hookup, as you all may have guessed, is a program that focuses on hooking up. So we talk about sex, we talk about consent, and we also talk about sexual assault. So where we see it in our culture, where it tries to hide, where we want it to go, known as the hell away. So that's really our focus, to empower students around these topics. Now, this sort of software may be new to you all. It certainly was new to us. So we're going to take you through the same logistics we take students through. So you have a little control panel, which you can click the orange arrow to expand or minimize your control panel. As Ben mentioned, things about this software is that it allows us to keep information anonymous. So any questions that we ask, please put your responses in the questions box. We're using that, not the raised hands feature, so that we can really engage in a conversation. And finally, you have the power to adjust just how big our lovely faces are with that little toggle bar, and just how big the PowerPoint is. All right, Anthony, you want to take us into this program?
Yeah, I do. I want to actually launch a poll. I want to get to know the folks who are on the line a little bit. I'm going to ask y'all a question. What did you all learn in sex ed? Pick from the following: how to have mutually satisfying encounters, how to put a condom on a banana, how to ask for consent, sex ed. What's that? Or avoid sex. Sex is bad. Please feel free to pick an answer. I will give y'all about 5 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, and 1. And I'm going to close this poll, and I'm going to share the results. It looks like, Anne, the vast majority of people on this call were taught avoid sex. Sex is bad. Followed by how to put a condom on a banana. I'm noticing that also some folks had sex ed. Wait, what's that? So thank you all so much for being real with us at noon during your lunch hour and going back into the past of your life. So it's important for us to understand all of us needs to be here. We are all engaging in these conversations because whether you are having sex, whether you are wanting to have sex, or whether you haven't and you don't plan to, this is a conversation for all of us. Let me ask y'all in the questions box, tell me, why is it important for all of us to engage in a conversation about sexual assault prevention?
Everyone's at college together. Yeah, that's a super good point. That we're all, you build a community with people with all different experiences and wants and needs.
Absolutely. Anybody can be a victim. True, unfortunately. Someone wrote, sex happens. Interesting. Okay, it just is out there.
Yeah. And so we have the same language, someone's pointing out. And I really appreciate that one. I think that's actually an amazing segue. Thank you to whoever said that, to what we want to talk about, which is the things that maybe we should have learned in sex ed and maybe didn't. That, as glad as I am that you all know how to keep your produce super safe, ultimately what we really want to talk about is what is the two that both of you all said you don't really think you or students know a lot about mutually satisfying encounters, about having collective language around how we talk about things like hooking up, which, let's be real, vague and confusing term, can mean a lot of different things. For this conversation, let's assume it means some sort of hookup that is sexual or romantic in nature. So maybe not your internet hookup, maybe those romantic hookups.
And
so
whatever.
So help me out in the questions box. What are some elements of a good hookup?
Oh, Anne, this lunch hour is getting real fun. Someone said mutual, consensual. Good answer. We have some Title IX folks on the line, I'm guessing. Enjoyable. Yes, we want that enjoyment. The way I said it, it made me think of the double mint, just like enjoyment, double mint, did it? I won't make that joke to your students. They are far too young to have any of that.
But that just shows how customizable this program is, Anthony, that you know your audience. Yeah, someone's pointing out fun, pleasure. Yeah. All right, absolutely. I love it. And y'all are coming up with very similar answers to what we get when we ask this question for students. So we often hear things like there's attraction involved, there's some orgasms involved, there's good communication, consent, as y'all have pointed out, is totally present, it's mutual, it's safer sex, there's some real good participation, and it's sober. Now, what actually
let's talk about it.
Consent?
Yeah. So just tell me in the questions box, when we say consent, this is something that we've been talking about for years with students. What is the most common answer we hear when we ask, what is consent?
Affirmation, okay.
Permission.
We hear that a lot. Both parties agree to wanting to participate, and someone's also pointing out a yes, that they say yes verbally.
Absolutely. And all of these things are absolutely correct. I love that the last answer, yes, that's the thing we hear the most often. We're like, what's consent? And people are like, yes. And I'm always like, what? Just people walk into a bedroom, their clothes explode, and they're just like, yes. But we understand it's all about everything that y'all are pointing out. It's whoever is agreeing that they have the conversation. What do you want to do? The person says what they want to do. The other person says yes. And then it's respected, that it's a win-win situation, that it's all about getting that verbal agreement, understanding the physical properties of consent, understanding that we want participants to participate, to have a good time, I don't know, recommend us to friends or come back for seconds, I don't know. But it's all about that verbal, that active, and the fact that it's ongoing, that you may have noticed I have a wedding ring, and I always point out, when I put this on, it wasn't oh, I'm at Six Flags, I can ride the rides whenever I want. No, I'm at the front of the line, sure, but it's like a circus, or not a circus, it's a carnival. I need a new ticket every single time I want to see the acrobats on the high wire, apparently. So, yeah.
Thank you for that beautiful metaphor, Anthony. So, if we talk about the good hookups, we also got to talk about the bad hookups. So what do you all think? What are the elements of a bad hookup?
No enjoyment. Someone just flipped what they said earlier. Awkwardness.
Yeah, awkwardness, okay.
We hear that a lot from students.
Let me ask you all this. Do you think consent is present in a bad hookup?
Ooh. Love it. Someone said yes. And then immediately afterwards, someone said, it should be, it can. And then someone just wrote question mark.
I love this because this is what we really want to clarify for students is the idea of what is a hookup, good or bad, and what is rape. So as you all are pointing out, there are a lot of things that could make a hookup bad. It could be awkward. It could be weird. There could be a lack of safer sex and someone could get an STI or a STB, sexually transmitted baby. Maybe people aren't on the same page. You know, one person thought this was going to lead to a relationship. The other person wanted it to just be like a one-night thing. But at the end of the day, consent is still present because if consent is not present, it's not a hookup at all. What it really is rape. And so we got to break down what sexual assault is to understand the difference. So what do you all think are the tools that people use in our culture in order to facilitate the crime of rape?
Pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Drugs. Alcohol. Ooh, someone's using fancy words. Coercion. Yes, absolutely. Form of pressure that can be verbal or even non-spoken, those sort of coercive tactics.
Yeah, I mean, y'all are spot on. And these are many of the things that we hear from students as well. This idea that there's force, but it's not just physical force, right? It's things like threats, manipulation, things that fall under this sort of umbrella term of coercion, of emotional manipulation.
Absolutely.
Also, it could be about someone being underage. As y'all pointed out, alcohol definitely plays a factor if someone's incapacitated or even passed out. So let's take a little bit of a, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to click that yet. Let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into this idea of alcohol.
Absolutely. And it's honestly fine that you put those things up there because I want to start honestly by asking the question, what are students, what do people hear in our culture about alcohol and consent? We've been talking about consent. So what do we talk about in our culture about alcohol and consent?
Ooh, dangerous. Yeah, we hear that a lot. Don't mix.
Yeah, use a different mixer, use Sprite, you know?
Someone's pointing out, nice, Anthony. Someone's pointing out that drunk equals no consent is a message that we get a lot. Absolutely.
Exactly. We often hear students saying a drunk person can't give consent, which, all right, makes sense, but we like to flip it on its head and get the students to think a little more critically. I ask people in general to think more critically because that puts a lot of onus on a drunk person. And let's be real. In the chat box, you can tell me if you want or not. Do any of you know someone who's been really drunk and has said yes to some really stupid crap? You can just think about that one, right? I'm stopping and thinking about this. It's the summer right now. A lot of people out there who think, you know what? There's a swimming pool. There's a shed right next to it. I bet after a couple of White Claws, I could get up there and leap right into that pool. Just because they think that's a good idea doesn't mean that all of us on the pool deck should allow them to do that, right? Drunk people, they may try to say yes to stupid things. It's why we like to flip it on its head and say, you cannot get consent from someone who's drunk. Just because a drunk person says yes doesn't mean that they should do that thing. And we like to take the responsibility off the drunk person and on the person who's initiating, as we've been talking about with consent, the person who's trying to do something with a drunk person. And you put it up and you can click it again, and all of the signs of incapacitation that the students, people point out, we can see all of these signs. Someone stumbling, having difficulty with words, throwing up, passing out, acting crazy, or being, I shouldn't use that term, but using their personality shift. Or we may know that person who has had a lot to drink and don't show any of the signs of it. We still know that they're in a risky state of mind. Never in the history of time has someone had been like, I was safe and then I had a handle of tequila and then they were like, I'm really safe now. Nah, that's just not how alcohol works. It doesn't clarify any sort of situation.
Yeah, not even the clear ones. So once we really understand alcohol, we want to sort of underline the idea that hookups and rape look really different, including the aftermath. After a good hookup, someone might be happy, they might be tired, they might be hungry, and it's going to last a little while. A bad hookup, someone might feel regretful or awkward or weird. And again, that's only going to last a little while. I mean, it might be a little longer than that good hookup, but I don't think anyone's on their deathbed being like, oh, that bad hookup I had 40 years ago. However, the aftermath of sexual assault can look really different.
Absolutely. And it's important. That's why we do this exercise, to understand that a blurred line between a good hookup and a bad hookup. But when, unfortunately, our culture tries to blur the line between hooking up and rape, especially a bad hookup and rape, there are a lot of dangers that, let's be real, I'll ask you all, tell me in the questions box, do you think there are people who have been sexually assaulted and just want to call it a bad hookup? Do you think that that happens?
Good question. Yeah, immediately people are saying yes. Some people are saying it seems like it happens all of the time.
Sure. I mean, we have a lot of stigmatization of people who have been victimized, who've been hurt, been harmed by someone. And we might not want that negative attention or that sort of dissecting of the behaviors. And we talk about victim blaming a lot, but it's important for us to understand that the other inverse also happens when we blur the line between a bad hookup, that people buy into this fact that there's all kinds of people who have had a bad hookup and turn around and call it rape. Now, let's be real. I will tell any audience that I'm in front of that, yes, there are people who have lied about the crime of rape. But those of us, especially who are Title IX, who know intimately this crime, we know it doesn't happen that often. But let me ask, why do you think it is that people in our society want to believe that there's a lot of people lying about the crime of rape?
That's a great question, Anthony.
You're so affirmative, and I appreciate it. I love it. It's making me feel good on this little Thursday.
Yay! And I'm going to give you all on the line like an extra moment to respond to that one, because I feel like that's a difficult one. That's a complicated question. And someone's pointing out that it's easier to believe someone's lying than to face the fact that someone they know committed rape. Yeah, I think that's really the heart of it, that it's so much easier to call someone a liar or even a slut than it is to say someone who I know, someone who maybe I like, someone who I trusted, made a decision to hurt someone. Yes, we've tried to differentiate the ideas around false accusations.
And do you mind talking for a second also about, let's be real, I'm a Black man presenting with a white woman, that is also a complication to talking about the idea of false accusations. It's not easy enough for me to be like, it doesn't happen as much as you imagine it. Boom, let's not acknowledge history, you know?
Well, I really appreciate that, absolutely, because I think especially at this moment in America where we're having this raising awareness of the ongoing racial challenges in this country, the structural racial challenges of this country, when we talk about Black men being falsely accused, we can't ignore the history of Black men being stereotyped as criminals in all sorts of ways, including stereotyped as criminals of the crime of sexual violence. And that white women have lied at moments in our history, and not even, frankly, always in our history. And that's resulted in death and lynching for Black men. So we also want to hold space for this, that conversations around false accusations might be really different depending on everyone's lived experience. And that we always want to work to empower survivors and to support survivors. But we also can't ignore the fact that this conversation is just different for different people.
And what inevitably honestly happens is Black and brown women end up being left out of the conversation completely. And that's where, you know, we always want to come back to, when we talk about supporting survivors, we're talking about supporting all survivors at the end of the day with all of our programs.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we also need to address the fact that right now, hooking up looks a little bit different than it might have looked like 4 months ago. Our entire lives, for the most part, are taking place online. So we make sure that we talk about that too. So we break down what online dating actually looks like. Are there unique rules for it? And let me ask you all, what do you think, whether you have actually done an online date, whether you've talked to someone who's done an online date, what are the signs that someone's had a really good online date?
they want to go on a second one?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. They want to talk about it.
Love that.
Time flies. Ooh, I love that.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Uh-oh. So, I'm full of like, no bill to pay.
I guess that's one of the perks of dating online instead of real life, right? You don't have to have that awkward moment where you're like, who's going to pick up the check on this one? Because like, well,
like, ooh, we both got our own separate. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
What we're really seeing though, and all these things y'all are pointing out, is the signs of a good date, online or offline, are pretty similar. You feel respected. There was good participation. Things were very consensual. There was a lot of reciprocity. That just because this is happening in an online platform, it doesn't actually mean that the expectations of respect and consent are any different.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm looking at time, and I want to respect everybody on the line's time. And I want us to understand that part of this conversation also goes to the second thing that you see listed in the bullet points, which is sexual imagery being sent. And we use all of the research that we have on sexting and help students to understand that we live in a different age. When I was coming up, yeah, sending a sexy or a risque photo would involve like a Polaroid camera, shaking it out, putting that crap, finding a stamp, you know, like that took a lot more steps than it takes today. But that we have to understand the majority of time when someone sends a photo to someone, the reason that they sent it is because they were asked to. And that more often than not, that ask is coercive, is tricked. And that when someone takes that trust and manipulates it and shares that photo, that is hugely problematic behavior. But it doesn't fall on the person who trusted somebody else. It falls on the person who broke that trust. And so absolutely, we would talk about understanding this and breaking down these myths and the barriers that stand in our way of talking about these things openly and honestly. And you go to the next slide, and it helps us to connect to really bridging the gap between, all right, we see these problematic behaviors, we see these things, we have this shared language, as someone so brilliantly pointed out, that we can understand, okay, how do we walk away from these presentations? Whether we are digital or in person, we have to understand that being a good, what we call upstander, someone who sees something problematic, they see that they are part of that system and that they have to get off their butt and do something to stop it. And then we use, you know, we have language for it. We call it, you know, the D's of interventions, as in these are the ways you can do something about stopping this stuff: direct, distract, delegate, and using the shared language to apply it to some scenarios.
So just really quickly, we're going to show you the type of scenarios that we talk about with students to make sure that they're empowered to step in. So we make sure we talk about online life. So this is an example of one of the ones we tend to talk about, where a group of friends is sort of interrogating one of their friends with some pretty intense language about her sexual relationship with her boyfriend. And in the full program, we actually do a much longer exercise about language like this and what is the harm of language like this. But what we make sure when we talk about this is that students understand, or rather students leave this conversation with actual things that they could do if they saw something like this, whether it's checking in with the person who might be uncomfortable, whether it's messaging the people who are saying this stuff and saying, hey, that's not okay, or if this was like a group project, talking to a teacher or a TA. And here's an example of another one we might do that's online that focuses on something that could happen in a more classroom setting and how someone might step in and what's problematic about this. And in the full program, we also make sure that we talk about if things happen in real life, because at whatever stage your campus is going to be open this fall, we know that eventually students will be back in classrooms and will be interacting with each other. And so we want to make sure that we're really giving them those tools to be ready to be awesome upstanders, the people who actually step up and do something when they see something that's hurting someone.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, we are all, no matter where we are, when we're physically together or we're digitally together, we're asking ourselves the same question: is someone being hurt on my watch? And if the answer is no, all right, cool. Keep your eyes open, keep keep vigilant, make sure that we're paying attention and we have each other's back. That's awesome. But if the answer is yes, that we have to do something and keep doing something so that it isn't a problem. We're seeing this happen in our world right now, and I'm so excited to engage in conversations with these first years who are coming in to your institutions and all of the student bodies that we get the opportunity to talk to, because these movements that we're seeing right now being taken to the streets, they are being led by these young folks who have unbelievable amounts of courage and language that I wish I had at their age. And so we want to help fuel that fire by saying, yes, you have agency, and that we can even have more shared language, and we can connect all of these intersectional conversations together to make sure that we're reducing harm and increasing respect on all of our campuses and all of our communities.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you all so much. We're going to now pass this back to Ben so that he can answer any questions that you all might have.
Thanks, y'all.
Hey, all right. Thanks, Ann and Anthony, so much. We really appreciate your, being willing to do that and do it in such a kind of a pleasant, interactive, accessible, engaging way. As you all saw, that's kind of how it rolls, right? You first couple minutes are a little bit unusual, but then you really start to feel like you're there. You really start to feel like you're engaging with the educators in a way that you normally would. And in some ways, there's some serious benefits to that. Not only being able to see their faces much closer up, which is great because they have good skin, but also being able to ask anonymous questions or ask specific questions and be able to hear everyone. And that's really useful. There are also some benefits that we can provide you as a kind of client that we normally get. Like we can send you a report about who all attended. And the software actually allows us to gauge how interested they were. It gives them an interest score using kind of an algorithm about how much they participate. And so we can kind of deliver that to you as the client, and it helps you kind of keep your checklist and your roster in order and things like that. But at this point, I really want to just open it up and make sure that you feel like you have a decent amount of information to start thinking about these things. So if you have any questions, I would love to be able to answer those. And I'll give you a couple seconds here to type those in and see what I can do. Live captioning. Okay, so I'm seeing a question about live captioning. That's a great question. I actually don't know. I don't think that is available at this point because I don't think the software keeps up with people talking that fast. I suppose what is possible is that we could look into that a little bit more. So the person who asked that, if you want to send me an email, just ben@catharsisproductions.com. I can look into that a little bit more and get you that information, or see if we can find some kind of alternative solution. While people are still thinking, I'll give you a little bit more information that we haven't given you yet. That is that if you're thinking about pricing, what we are doing is we're basically keeping the pricing the way it has been historically. So if we've been to your institution before, pricing is very similar. The good thing is that because most of those times we do a flat rate and we count travel in that when we ask for that kind of price, we are able to pull travel out. So in general, if we are doing a sex signals presentation for your institution, we'll probably take around $750 off that tab because that's usually about how much we spend on travel for a one-day engagement or a one-day trip. If we're talking about this program, the hookup, that's usually only one educator coming, and so we'll take about $500 off that. Again, depending on how many presentations there were and how many days we were supposed to be there. But if it was just one day that we were coming, we'll probably pull about $500 off that, and we can reissue a new contract for you through Bash Schuler. Let me see, we got another question here. Greatest difference between hookup and sex signals with the new Title IX. So in terms of the differences between hookup and sex signals, they're honestly a little bit less obvious with these virtual trainings. The content is still a little bit different. We consider sex signals our one-on-101. So we kind of scaffold our programming with the idea that somebody's going to kind of gradually learn and be able to develop and make their conversation more mature and more nuanced as they get more and more content and interact with that content. So sex signals remains our 101. It's kind of about consent. It's about kind of base level stuff. And then hookup is what kind of goes to a more 10,000 foot version where we kind of spread out the continuum of harm. So the content's a little bit different in that, but because historically sex signals has been a lot more theatrical, where it's kind of a script where people are performing some of it, and hookup is more of just an entirely facilitated conversation. Now they're a little more similar. We're actually trying to use two people like you saw today for a lot of our hookup presentations. We're not able to do that for every one of them based on just how in demand and how hectic orientation season is. But we are trying to use two folks to kind of balance it and to also kind of subtly show a good communication across genders, things like that. But there's not as much of a change now. A lot of it's just still the content basis, and hookup is a more nuanced kind of mature conversation in a lot of respects. Well, the resources that we provide to students need to be local or national. So we prefer they're both. We prefer there be some local information. So when you book this presentation, if you've booked it before, you know that we ask for what local resources you have. We are going to try and work those into the presentation. We'll actually put them up on the screen, asking for those ahead of time. But we also still like to give national resources, partially because people are in different places, especially now. Some people may not be on campus, but also even when we were back in person, we still liked to give some national resources because people weren't always comfortable going to their school counseling center, for example. So we want resources that are applicable to people in different ways. And so we will ask for those resources. We'll put them on the screen, but we'll also provide national ones as well. All right, I'll give it another moment or two. Okay, I'm not seeing anything else come in. So if you think of any other questions, or if you're furiously typing it right now, but it's a long thing and we cut this off before you get finished, feel free to send me an email, ben@catharsisproductions.com. A lot of you are also familiar with working with our college booking agency, Bass Schuler. You can contact them. They can help out with questions and answers and things like that. The thing to keep in mind is just that we know that this year is an anomaly. We know that things are different and we know that things are unique. And so a lot of the processes that we have kept streamlined before and almost done kind of an assembly line on in terms of contracts and in terms of answering questions and things like that, we know that this is going to need to be a much more individualized time. And we are going to be spending some more time with each individual school, talking to them, figuring out their needs, figuring out how to adjust them. Our educators are still going to be calling to figure out exactly what the logistics will look like and stuff like that. So I think it's just know that we're expecting to spend a little more face-to-face time with y'all as we kind of go through this process and we kind of figure it out. And that we hope that we can find a solution for everybody, and that we know that everybody's situation is unique and unusual, and we're going to work with you as best as we can. So we really appreciate your time today. I really hope this was helpful, just to get it in your bones and see kind of what it looks like. We're going to be planning some other demos like this for our other programs. So for Sex Signals and Say What, those are our other popular orientation programs. So we're going to be having some demos for that. We're also going to record this and make it available in case somebody wasn't able to be here and they want to see it later, and you can send them to that link if you need to show anybody. But we really appreciate your time today, and best of luck as you go through the rest of this week and as you go through this weekend and as you try and make sense of everything going on in the world. And again, we're looking at trying to take care of people in every way that we can. So we appreciate your time doing that. All right, folks, have a great day. Thank you very much.